September meeting of the Kernersville Planning Board to order. First item on the agenda is staff presentation for the format of the remote meeting.
Tonight, for the people who are on YouTube, if you wish to call in, you can call in at 336-996-7289. That's 336-996-7289. We ask you to wait until it's your agenda item. If you call in early, we'll have to request a callback when it's in your agenda item. So once again, 336-996-7289. Thank you.
And next item on our agenda is a board roll call. Scott Tapp.
Not present.
Nathan Meyer. Nathan
He is
Meyer.
not
Here.
Luann Davis.
Here.
Jim Frottenberg.
Here.
Christina Welch.
Here.
Chris Oakman.
Here.
Steve Hutchins.
Here.
Margaret Burks.
Here.
And Jim Waddell, I'm present also. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for August 9th, 2021 Planning Board meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. This is Freidenberg.
I'll second it.
We have a motion for approval and a second is presented. Who did the second?
Steve Hutchins.
And Steve, okay, good. The roll call, Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Frottenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oakman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
I wasn't present, so I can't vote.
and Jim Waddell's a yes, so the motion's carried. Next item on our agenda are the public sessions. First one's a preliminary subdivision review. Braille Ridge Subdivision, Mark Smith, agent for the owner, for property located at 9431 County Line Road, near the southern terminus of Deborah Lane and County Line Road, being all of pins 6897-10-1878.00, containing a total of 35.83 plus or minus acres. Petitioner is requesting a 55 lot subdivision with a density of 1.5 lots per acre for property currently zoned RS20. Action required is preliminary subdivision recommendation. Staff have any presentation they'd like to make to the board?
Yeah, regarding this case, this is a public session. We held our public comment period at the last meeting. The planning board made a motion to continue to tonight's meeting, so there's more members. The subdivision is administrative review process, and so we're reviewing whether or not the submitted plans conform to our subdivision regulations. In the staff report and also in the minutes, the staff report did their findings, and we also recommended some conditions. So at this time, the planning board finding the facts and conditions would have the development comply with the subdivision regulations. So we're requesting the board to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen.
Okay. Any discussion from the board?
Yeah, this is Freidenberg. So we've got findings of fact and we've got conditions. If these conditions need to be met, right, for this to be approved.
Yes.
The conditions have not been met as of right now. Is that correct?
Correct. The conditions are written to allow the developer understand what he would need to do during the construction and filing his final plat. And so this is a preliminary subdivision review. And so we're only laying out the standards of the regulations and our conditions. If he complies with those, he then would be eligible to undertake his construction and submit his final plat to be recorded so lot sales can take place.
What assurances, though, would we have as a board that the conditions, as well as some other protections raised by the citizens in this, that those will be followed through with? Do we have any leverage on that?
Basically leverage, like all development reviews, approvals that go through the Planning Board, Board of Aldermen. It's the responsibility of the staff to assure all the standards are met and all the conditions are met as they go through the process. And so, at this time, staff has recommended approval based upon what has been submitted, what our conditions are.
Okay.
A good example, the other subdivision we did about 6 months ago on County Line Road, that developer off Chelsea Place was just north of, or just east of Chelsea Place. They got their preliminary plat approval with conditions. They now have submitted us construction drawings, moving towards construction and platting. So, so that's a good example. That's Stonehaven subdivisions doing the same process as we speak.
I raise all this because I don't know that I have a good comfort level about the conditions being met down the road. So I don't know that I have a good comfort level recommending approval. And I'm inviting the other planning board members to give us their thoughts on that.
What makes this different than any other case, Jim, that makes you uncomfortable about conditions being met? I mean, we do a lot of recommending for approval with conditions.
So, I just don't know whether there's been discussions about some of the lot sizes or discussions about whether the wetlands are properly delineated. And those things seem to be, it's just going to be too preliminary at this point for my comfort level.
Okay. Any other discussion from the board?
We had several other people, but not at the meeting last month. Is there a place in the booklet that we got for this meeting where they can turn to see what those conditions are?
Yeah,
Nathan, I believe it's page 4.
Yeah, page 4, I'm looking at them.
I had some concerns as Jim did with following through with this project in the future and the concerns of the citizens. I did really read the conditions, and I feel that kind of eases my mind as far as my concerns. It seems like they're addressed in the conditions. But I feel kind of like Jim does. I'm uncomfortable about, based on what I've heard from some of the neighbors.
I guess I'm a little puzzled why this case would draw that and not other cases, but because that's what staff is there for. Once we make a recommendation, the Board of Aldermen accept ours and maybe even add more conditions to it and say, okay, Mr. Developer, you can implement your plan with these restrictions or these, and staff is responsible for taking that with those conditions attached to it and making sure all that happens. If it's a wetlands, and staff's responsible for making sure that the development has a wetland expert go out and look at it and determine everything that has to be done. And those can become conditions of this report or this development.
Okay, in my opinion, I have some comfort level problems as well, but in my opinion, I don't think I can really vote against it. So I'm not saying that, but there's been some things that were addressed that I think people have some concerns with working with the developer, and it just gives me an uncomfortable feeling. However, I don't think that I could vote against it because it does seem to conform.
Yeah, because right now, the planning board, the action we're looking at is an administrative review, whether or not the current finding of facts of compliance with the regulations and current conditions meet our standards. And so it really, that's what we're looking at from the planning board. The Board of Aldermen will be looking for your recommendation, whether or not the finding of facts are correct and the conditions will address anything missing on the current site plan.
So are you ready for a motion at this point, or is there more discussion needs to take place?
Well, what's the pleasure of the board? You want to have any other comments I'd like to make?
Tim, this is Luann, and I think that the thought about being uncomfortable is the feedback we've gotten from the citizens and the erratic behavior of that developer, which feelings can't come into our decision making. I understand that, but I think that's made a very uncomfortable situation, and wondering how amicably is he going to be able to follow through on what the staff says he has to do.
The staff has worked with this developer on a couple of projects in town that were successfully undertaken. The last one was Davis Garden Apartments, which was a special use district rezoning with a specific site plan. And we've also worked with them on Salisbury Crossing. So, we've worked with them on implementing from these preliminary planning stages through construction through CO. So.
Thank you for that information.
Okay, any other discussion from the board?
Nobody likes to do it, so I'll go ahead and I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for approval with the conditions.
Okay, for a
I'll
second?
Chris
Okay.
Oakman seconds.
So we have a motion for approval with the additional conditions attached to it and a second. Okay, Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Frattenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oakman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and I also vote yes, motion carries. Next item on our agenda are the public hearings. As we go into the public hearings, I have a statement that I will read and kind of guide us through how to come in to make comments in this virtual world we're in. First
Hey,
case,
Jim?
Tony. Yeah,
Jim, 1 second. I think we have one more public session item, the Chick-Fil-A final development plan.
no, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm sorry. I skipped over. Final development plan. Daniel Hines, agent for the owner for final development plan approval of site plan titled Chick-Fil-A Kernersville in the HBS 2-phase zoning district for property located at 110 South Main Street, being all of PIN numbers 6875-49-9887, containing 1.49 plus or minus acres. Petitioner is requesting approval of the second phase of a 2-phase special use District zoning petition. Requested use is restaurant with drive-through. This is zoning docket K-524 FDP TR4.A2. Action required is site plan approval. Staff
So I'll
report.
be presenting this case tonight. Let me get my screen shared with the PowerPoint. Okay, is everyone able to see that all right?
Yes.
So as mentioned, this is a final development plan for the Chick-Fil-A on South Main. The petitioner is Daniel Hines and the owner is Chick-Fil-A. The existing zoning on the site is Highway Business Special Use District, and the proposed uses for the site are restaurant with drive-through service, and the total acreage for the site is 1.49 acres. This site is part of the Harmon Mills Shopping Center, which is all zoned highway business special use. Other adjacent zoning districts are institutional and public over at Triad Baptist. The purpose of the new final development plan, Chick-fil-A is looking to rebuild and modify their site layout to increase capacity and efficiency of their facilities and drive-through. Proposed site improvements include a new 4,703 square foot building and outdoor dining patio, new double stack drive-through lane and drive-through canopy, as well as additional parking. The applicant is proposing the use of permeable pavement in portions of the parking lot to help treat stormwater on site, as well as to help reduce the overall built-upon area on site. There are also existing street yards along South Main Street and the private access drive to the Harmon Mills Shopping Center that are to remain. And planting standards will have to be met at the time of construction drawing submittal. The applicant has also included proposed building elevations with their application. The new building will be predominantly composed of brick that are neutral colors with a dark bronze metal coping and in accents throughout the building. And they've also provided a 3D rendering of what the building would look like as well. So as proposed, the drive-through canopy would encroach into the required side yard, and our existing UDO only addresses canopy encroachments into required front yards along right-of-way. So later tonight, staff is proposing a text amendment KT268 to allow canopy encroachments into interior lot line setbacks, those between two lots not along a right-of-way. And we've included a condition within the staff report, and the applicant has been made aware that setback and encroachment requirements will need to be met at the time of construction drawing submittal. So based on those findings, staff is recommending approval of the final development plan with the conditions as presented in the staff report. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff at this point from the board? Okay, any discussion?
I've got one.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a way to, it's very, I'm sure everybody on here has been in and out of Chick-fil-A. Is there a way to help with making a left turn to get out of Chick-fil-A? Is there a way to help with that at all?
So staff did consider the traffic that comes in and out. The private access drives, I believe, are managed separately from Chick-fil-A as part of the shopping center. So any improvements such as a median or striping or improvements would have to be coordinated with the owner of the shopping center.
Okay, thank you.
Cameron, is the in and out where it is now, is that changing at all?
No, so the driveways are staying the same. There's an entrance kind of right as you come in, and then an exit on the other side there off of the private access drive.
Thank you.
But the circulation throughout the site itself is being modified and improved upon.
Okay, other questions? Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make
I
a
move
motion to
for the
approve.
approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Margaret Brooks for approval as presented,
I'll second it, Freidenberg.
and there's a second. Any further discussion by the board? Okay, we'll go through the roll call vote. Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Frattenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oakman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and Jim Waddell is also a yes, the motion carries. So now we're moving in to the section of our agenda entitled Public Hearings. I have a statement I'll read as we go through to kind of guide us through. First case is a rezoning. Tony Alford, agent for owner, requests a conditional use rezoning from PB-S to GB-C, General Business Conditional Use District, for the property located at 515 Pineview Court, containing a total of 1.329 acres and being all of PIN number 6886-52-1597. The requested uses are those that are contained in the staff report. This is zoning docket K-673.82. Action required is a zoning recommendation and the site plan recommendation. So is there a report from staff?
Yes, I'll be presenting this case as well.
Okay.
So let me reshare my screen. Okay, so this is a conditional
Hello?
All right. Sorry about that. All right, so this is a conditional use district rezoning for the old High Point Bank building, right across from Frida's, right at the corner of Pineview Drive and Highway 66. The petitioner is Tony Alford. The current zoning is pedestrian business special use, and requested zoning is general business conditional use. And the total acreage of the site is 1.329 acres. The applicant is proposing to redevelop the old High Point Bank building to accommodate 2 commercial tenants. Starbucks has expressed interest in one of the spaces, and a second tenant is still being identified at this time. As y'all may recall, the property was rezoned back in October of last year for a proposed 4-story mixed-use development with 53 apartment units. But since that time, as economic conditions have continued to change and improve, It has created some new opportunities for reuse of the site. So the proposed site improvements include a stacked drive-through and signage, removal of the existing bank teller area, a new dumpster area, as well as striping and islands to improve some of the internal circulation on site. This particular site does have somewhat limited parking, and so the applicant is proposing to add 7 additional compact spaces as well as a bike rack to help meet the parking requirements. The required parking for the site is 47 spaces, and the applicant has provided 59 spaces that include stacking spaces as well in the drive-thru. The High Point Bank site was originally approved with a modified street yard that consisted of a 10-foot street yard with a 3-foot brick wall, and that is going to remain to help shield parking and drive-through from view. The planting requirements, similar to the last case, will need to be met at the time construction drawings are submitted. So as mentioned earlier, the requested zoning is general business conditional use. Most of the adjacent properties are also general business or general business special use, as well as highway business and pedestrian business. The Kernersville Development Plan and Future Land Use Plan do recommend this area for commercial, and also recommend the redevelopment and reuse of properties in the downtown area, which this project would help meet. Staff is recommending one new condition that was not included in the original conditions included in the staff report. Since the applicant has provided and exceeded the UDO standards for required parking, we were recommending adding another new condition that drive-through stacking may be reduced to the UDO standards, since they are looking at multiple potential drive-through uses or tenants of the space. So based on the findings of the staff report, staff is recommending to move to amend the zoning ordinances of the town by rezoning the property in case K673A2 from PBS to GBC, the said rezoning being consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, Kernersville Development Plan, and further being both reasonable and in the public interest because of the following facts. The Kernersville Development Plan and Land Use Plan recommend the area for commercial uses. The GBC zoning district is conducive to adaptive reuse of existing structures or infill projects. The petitioner requested a conditional use district rezoning, which allowed a specific site plan to be considered. And the property is located in the Highway Overlay Corridor District, which has enhanced design standards for buildings, parking, landscaping, and signage. And we're also recommending approval of the site plan with the conditions as presented in the staff report, with the additional drive-through stacking condition as presented. And I will take any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff from the board?
Cameron, can you back up one slide and tell me what that stacking thing was again?
Yes, sure, I can do that. So the stacking requirement is for drive-through lanes, essentially drive-through spaces that get to be counted toward the parking requirement. And our UDO requires 5 stacking spaces be provided for any sites where drive-through uses are proposed.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of staff?
Hey, this is Christina Welch. I have a question. Would the
Okay.
entryway into the, for staff, would the entryway into the parking lot, would that change or would it remain as is?
Yes, so let me see if I can make this a little larger for you. The driveway entrances to the site will remain, but as you'll notice, they are proposing to add some striping as well as some additional medians to help improve internal circulation so that there aren't any conflicts, getting to the proposed parking spaces and getting in and out of the drive-through.
Thank you.
Any other questions, staff? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing for this case. I will call on those in support of the application first, followed by those in opposition of the application, and anyone else who would like to come forward for the rebuttal. Please do not call in prior to my announcing who should be calling in. You call in before we are ready to hear your information. You will be asked to call back during the appropriate time. When speaking, please be concise and avoid repeating information already shared by other speakers. There is a delay for callers to be patched into the virtual meeting by staff. Please be patient as we wait for callers to be put through. We only have the capacity to accept one phone call at a time. If you are unable to get through, please be patient and keep trying. Those who are in support of the application should call in at this time. Remember, we will be taking one caller at a time. Staff will notify us as soon as we have someone on the line who is in support of this petition.
Chairman, we have Tony Alford to speak on
Okay.
support of this case.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Planning Board, this is Tony Alford, 7040 Interlaken Drive in Kernersville. And I'm just calling to answer any questions you might have and vote in support of it. As the gentleman said earlier, there's been a lot of new changes here recently in the past few months that's allowed us to try to be able to keep the beautiful building that's there. And that's why we've resubmitted this with the interest we've been getting here in the last few months.
Okay. Any questions of Ms. Alford by the board? Okay. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the petition? We'll wait a few minutes to see if anyone calls in. Okay. Hearing no one, we'll now start accepting calls for those in opposition to the petition.
Matthias, we have anybody in opposition?
No calls yet. Looks like no one's
Jim, I
calling
think
in.
what was it, Matthias?
It looks like no one's calling in.
Okay. So no one further speaking in opposition to the petition. I'll declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move for the approval of the zoning amendment.
Okay.
I'll second it. Mr. Oakman.
We have a motion for approval as presented by staff and a second. Any further discussion of the board? Okay, let's go through our roll call. Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Leland Davis,
Yes.
Jim Trottenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oatman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burke,
Yes.
and Jim Waddell is a yes. Motion is carried. Our next rezoning is Greg Senior, agent for owner, requested general use rezoning from RM18 to RS7 and IP, residential single family and institutional and public, for the property located at 225 South Main Street, containing a total of 0.36 plus or minus acres, being all of PIN number 6886-23-1102, and a general use rezoning for HBS and RS12 to IP, institutional and public, for the property located at 215 South Main Street, containing a total of 1.524 plus or minus acres, and being portions of PIN number 6886-23-3153. This is zoning docket K-792, and action required is a rezoning recommendation.
Jim, I've got a question.
Okay,
This property is located next to mine. Do I need to recuse myself from this case?
no,
Okay,
so you have no financial interest or any kind of interest in the property that we're talking about, do you?
no, sir.
Okay, no, you don't need to recuse yourself. Staff report,
Yes, this will be my case tonight, planning board, so I'm gonna turn my screen off or turn my camera off and share my screen. Let's see. Okay. So case K792 at 215 and 225 South Main Street is a general use rezoning. The petitioner is Greg Senior, but the owner is the Paul J. Senior Botanical Garden Foundation. The existing zoning is a bit of a hodgepodge covering the two parcels. There's residential single family or RS12, highway business special use district or HBS, and residential multifamily RM18. The proposed zoning is residential single family RS7 and institutional and public. We are covering portions of the total site. So you'll see the portions highlighted in yellow, and I'll get a little bit more detailed in the next couple slides. Nothing is changing to the Botanical Gardens special use permit for their currently gardened site. So it's 1.621 acres approximately. That's portions of the two parcels that combined total 7.258 acres. So K792 only covers just the portion, this portion right here. This is 225 South Main Street. There's a little sliver right here. This is the HBS that's remaining. And then this portion right here, which was additional land that the Botanical Garden Foundation acquired. So this portion is remaining the same. This will stay IPS. And then this portion will be brought to IP. And then this one will be split zoned and then later subdivided. So at 215 South Main Street, and this is the Botanical Garden site, the existing IPS is to remain. And the red line that you're seeing, those are zoning district boundaries. The blue line indicates the parcel boundary. So this shows you the entire parcel of land that's owned by the Botanical Garden Foundation. And then the red lines show the different zoning in different cases. So this is currently IPS. This large bit is IPS. This HBS is left over from a previous zoning that never got cleaned up. So this is just a cleanup. And then this is also from RS12 to IP. At 225 South Main Street, the applicant is proposing a subdivision, and that's handled at the staff level. So it'll just be moving, adding a second lot. This piece at the back will go from RM18 to institutional and public, and then there's a land hook that's, I think, just off the screen on the plat, but there's a land hook from this parcel to the gardens parcel. So then the parcel with the house would become smaller than it exists right now, because right now it covers this entire piece. But so it's proposed to become smaller and go from RM18 to RS7. In the land use plan, the site is designated as several different things. It's mixed use, low density residential, and high density residential. But the property has several mitigating circumstances given its location. So the Kernersville Development Plan and the Land Use Plan recommend redevelopment and reuse of properties in the downtown. And the properties or the parcels are either currently used for single family residential where the house is, or are landlocked, preventing their redevelopment as designated. The portion of the Botanical Gardens parcels that they've acquired at the very, very back is not accessible except through the gardens parcel. So it could not be developed in the low density residential feature land use designation. And then good historic preservation practice would preserve the existing historic home as a single family use rather than demolition or subdivision into a multi-tenant space. So that makes the single family zoning appropriate for that parcel despite the high density residential land use designation on its parcel. So the staff recommendation is to move to amend the zoning ordinance of the town by rezoning portions of the property in case K792 from RS12 and HBS to IP for the parcel at 215 South Main Street, and from RM18 to RS7 and IP for the parcel at 225 South Main Street. The said rezoning is inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan, but is both reasonable and in the public interest because the Kernersville Development Plan and Land Use Plan recommend redevelopment and reuse of properties in our downtown. The property is located in the Central Kernersville Overlay District. The Paul Senior Botanical Gardens contribute to downtown Kernersville's small town atmosphere, specifically the goals of creating a vibrant downtown and maintaining a sense of place. Thus, the surrounding property should be developed sensitively to avoid adverse impacts to the environment. Mitigating factors preclude the portions designated for low density residential and high density residential from redeveloping as such, but the limited scope of land to be affected would not prevent the remaining areas so designated from being developed or redeveloped. And the RS7 zoning district is conducive to preserving the existing historic home's use as a single family dwelling as it was constructed.
I so move.
A little early yet, Margaret. Wait a minute. Any questions, staff? Okay, then I'll declare the public hearing open for this case. Remember, we only have the capacity to put one during this virtual meeting, one caller through at a time. And if those in favor of the petition should call in now.
Yes, you have anybody on the line?
Chairman, we have one call so far and we're patching them in now.
Okay.
Chairman, they're here.
Hi, my name is Adrian Rothling with Paul J. Senior Botanical Garden.
Okay, go ahead, Adrian.
Hi, I just want to thank Mr. Hatling and Ms. Garner for their presentation. We appreciate the time to consider an amendment to our zoning map. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you all here.
Okay. Any questions of Adrian at this point from the board? Okay, thank you very much for calling in.
Thank you, everyone.
Are there any others who wish to speak in support of the application? We'll give you just a few more minutes to call in. Have any callers?
No, Chairman.
Okay. Then I'll ask for those who are in opposition to the petition to start calling in now. Anyone speaking in opposition?
Not yet, but remember that our YouTube live stream is 30 seconds delayed from the actual meeting time. So we should have at least 1 minute for people to call in.
Okay.
We have no calls.
Okay, hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move to amend the zoning ordinance of the town by rezoning portions of the property in case K 702 from RS 12 and HBS to IP for the parcel of at 215 South Main Street and from RM 18 to RS 7 and IP for the parcel at 225 South Main Street.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. We have a motion for approval as presented by staff
I'll second it, Freidenberg.
and a second. Any further discussion of the board? Okay, Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Fruttenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oakman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so the motion carries. Thank you. The next case is a Kernersville Development Plan. Curtis Switcher, agent for the town of Kernersville, for consideration of an amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan to amend the land use plan from low-density residential to mixed residential for properties located on the east side of Brookford Road, adjacent to the southern side of I-40, being all up in numbers 6885-92-5127 and 6895-013427 in conjunction with K791. This is zoning docket KDP 57. Action required is the land use plan amendment and recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to present the KDP amendment with the rezoning. So it'll be one presentation that will roll from the KDP information to the rezoning case information. So
Okay.
if everyone is ready, I'll share my screen and we'll get started.
All right.
And Jim, we're recommending the land use plan and rezoning be a combined public hearing. And so that Catherine will, as she stated, she'll present both of them now, and we recommend a combined public hearing.
Okay,
And
so
it
you
was
want C and D combined together? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, C and D would be combined together, and then
Okay.
separate votes on the plan and the rezoning.
Okay. So in addition to what we just considered, we're also including a rezoning. Scott Wallace and Amanda Hodering, agent for owners, requests a conditional use rezoning from RS 20 to RM 8-C residential multifamily conditional use district for properties located at 1645 Brookford Road, containing a total of 58.76 acres and being all of PIN number 6885-92-5127 and 6695-30-3427. Uses requested: residential buildings, townhomes, and residential buildings, twin homes. Zoning docket K-791. Action required would be a rezoning recommendation and a site plan recommendation.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for those who are watching at home, these cases were originally heard at the August Planning Board meeting. So since that meeting was cut short, we're going to start this over. So I'm going to give the full presentation again. There are some differences. We have added some information based on the public comments that we received at the August meeting. So there will be some things that are different, but it is largely the same information. But for the public's benefit, we're going to go ahead and just start over. We'll do it brand new.
Okay.
KDP 57 is the land use amendment, the land use plan amendment from low density residential to mixed residential development. The two parcels are on the east side of Brookford Road at I-40. The PIN numbers, as stated on the agenda, 6885-92-5127 and 6895-01-3427. So rezoning case K791 proposes 188 single-family attached homes on the subject parcels, which you can see in the darker black line on the left of Brookford Road, south of 40. So the single-family attached consists of townhomes and twin homes. We're recommending the land use plan amendment because of the changing environment in the town of Kernersville. The town's strategic sewer investment has expanded sewer in the lower Abbott's Creek and Reedy Fork areas. That has attracted major development, including Kernersville's Novant Medical Center, the VA Health Clinic, the Moses Cone Medical, FedEx Ground, Amazon, other logistics companies, and others. We are entering into a sewer expansion agreement with a couple of parcels on Brookford Road there, or Kernersville Medical Parkway, close to the intersection with Brookford. So there's a lot of development that is happening in that area, and some existing facilities are expanding as well. So the increased economic development in town has increased demand for housing. Data shows that new house starts continue despite the pandemic. I think everybody's seen signs go up and come down pretty quickly around town, and the real estate market is not slowing down. The town is also seeing demographic shifts. Change in age and lifestyle preferences has changed the demand for different types of housing. Baby boomers are generally desiring smaller houses that are maintenance-free, social and recreational amenities within their community. So they're looking to have it all, to have the neighborhood feel, but without the giant lawn to mow and the house to maintain. Millennials, some of the younger millennials are also looking for that. Those of us who are aging into the family end of the bracket are looking for houses that do have yards and that are a little bit bigger if you look at some of the recent data that's come out. But by and large, millennials and younger generations of young adults are looking for the same type of living environment, maintenance-free, smaller houses with convenient interstate access and access to other amenities. The land use plan defines mixed residential development as an area that has been established as transitional land use areas and are located along major thoroughfares. Mixed residential areas provide a supply of undeveloped land to accommodate the growing demand of smaller owner-occupied housing units such as cluster homes, duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, and condos. The demand for mixed residential is being driven by demographic changes of smaller family sizes, single parents, and an aging population. Rising land and development cost is also making higher density housing more attractive since they can be more affordable. Mixed residential developments offer developers the opportunity to construct several types of housing in different markets, thus enabling them to complete the project in a more rapid, cost-effective method. The map on the left shows the existing land use plan designations for this area. So 40 is kind of the dividing line between business centers. So this is the area that the community has said is good for future business growth and development. So it is designated as business center. Low density residential is on the south side of 40. So this is the area of existing low density residential. And at the time of the land use plan, was intended for low density residential. Now, this is why we do land use plan amendments, because over time things change, market conditions change, development patterns change. And so that's why we are recommending the map on the right. So most of the area would remain low density residential. The two parcels that are proposed for the rezoning would be mixed residential, serving as a transition between the business center on the north side of 40 and the lower density residential on the south side of 40. The land use plan recommends that mixed residential be designated in areas that are located off of major thoroughfares. Brookford Road itself is a minor thoroughfare, and the primary means of accessing the parcels are from Brookford Road via Kernersville Medical Parkway. The parkway is a major thoroughfare, and the entrance to the proposed development would be approximately 1,100 feet from the Kernersville Medical Parkway, just over the bridge, and by the parcels that are currently intended for business uses. So staff's recommendation on the land use plan for KDP 57 is approval of the resolution in the staff report to designate parcel numbers 6885-92-5127 and 6895-01-3427 as mixed residential. Are there any questions from planning board before we transition to the rezoning case? Okay. Case K791, the applicants are Scott Wallace and Amanda Hodiern. Amanda is the agent for the case, Scott Wallace and Keystone Homes. The owner is RLR Family LLC. The proposed zoning is from RS20 to RM8. The C stands for the conditional use, so they would be subject to this site plan if approved. The proposed uses are residential building twin home and residential building townhouse. Those are both single family attached houses, so they have their own parcel, their own lot, and they share an internal wall, at least with one other unit, as opposed to duplexes, which are two units but on the same parcel. So these would each be on their own parcel. There are 188 units proposed, and the units per acre are 3.20. So these two lots are within the ETJ. This map shows the extent of the ETJ limits, but the gray area is locations within the town limits. So the city town limits are fairly close, right across 40. In the closest spot from this area. So the development is rapidly increasing in this southeast side of Forsyth County and Kernersville in particular. So the rezoning uses: townhouse is a residential building which contains 3 or more dwelling units. Each unit occupies 1 zoning lot. And residential building twin home is a residential building which contains 2 dwelling units. Each unit occupies 1 zoning lot. So these, as I've said, these are known as single family attached housing. Each home has its own lot rather than being multiple units on a single zoning lot. That's multifamily. This is single family attached in that it is attached to another unit. With a conditional use district, the site plan becomes the plan for development if approved. So the site plan shows 188 units in 3 different configurations: townhouse rows, twin homes, and then townhouses in groups of 4 clustered around the garage. So the garages are at the center, and then the actual living spaces, the dwelling unit portion, kind of fans out around the garages. The plan also proposes common areas, including a community center with a pool and indoor amenities, mail kiosks, and on-site paved walking trails, plus the sidewalks. A type 2 buffer yard is required along property lines abutting the surrounding single-family residential. 15-foot buffer yard along Brookford Village Drive is shown on the site plan, and a 30-foot buffer yard along the western, southern, and eastern property lines are proposed. There is a creek that is on the eastern side of the property, and then along the opposite side of the creek is existing forest land or woodlands that would remain as shown on the plan. So here's the existing wooded area to remain. This is the flood zone right here and floodway, and then this is the area to be developed. And then this is Brookford Road here on the far left side of the screen. The applicant has submitted representative photos of the types of units to be constructed. The architectural designs are consistent with the Central Kernersville Overlay District, which is the most restrictive design district that we have. Staff is recommending a condition requiring conformance with the Central Kernersville Overlay District, such as hip and or gabled roof, windows with sills and lintels, window panes and window trim, stylized entrances, and decorative trim for the structure. So the photos show that they are meeting that. The condition would require that at the time of submittal and building permit issuance, that they would have to conform with that. So this would add protection to the town and the adjacent property owners of what would be constructed, that it would have those features. The land use plan, as we've discussed, is currently low density residential, which is a maximum of 3 units per acre. The proposed development is just over that at 3.19 units per acre. The proposed land use plan amendment is to mixed residential. The land use plan notes that demand for different types of residential units are being driven by changing family sizes, single parents, and an aging population. And then this, as I said before, this does serve as a transitional use between the Kernersville Medical Parkway, the growing institutional and commercial interests along Kernersville Medical, Brookford Road, and Highway 66, and then I-40, and then the area south of 40 that has traditionally been just residential. The latest NCDOT traffic count on Brookford Road was 450 trips. We anticipate that most trips will likely go directly to Kernersville Medical Parkway and away from the portion of Brookford Road with the existing residential homes. There's been a lot of concern about the intersection at Kernersville Medical Parkway and Brookford Road. If the intersection needs to be fixed, now would be the time to do so as development is increasing in the overall area. So the trip generation, you've seen quite a few emails about this today. The trip generation manual classifies this use as multifamily low-rise development. It's not multifamily as what we think of with zoning, but the ITE trip generation manual defines it as multifamily due to being townhome attached style development. That actually has fewer trips than single-family residential per the manual. So the single-family residential development has even more trips per day. So for multifamily low-rise development, it anticipates 7.32 trips per dwelling for a total of 1,376 trips per day. That's an estimate over a 24-hour period. So this is where it's confirmed that Catherine should never do math, or someone else should always double check her numbers. The numbers in the first staff report were incorrectly calculated. So again, that's my fault, and it's been corrected. And the town engineer has blessed it as this is correct. So the AM peak would be 86 trips and the PM peak would be 105 trips. So those are way lower than what I had originally calculated. And I'm sorry for the confusion, but these are much, much more palatable numbers than, in the multiple hundreds of trips. But the AM and PM peak numbers are just an estimate of the busiest single hour of the morning and evening rush period. I mean, we all go to work generally at different times within about a 2-hour window. So this is estimating that in the busiest hour of that entire morning rush hour, or morning rush period and evening rush period, this is about how many trips you could expect. So they don't add up to the total because people come and go throughout the day, but the numbers for the AM and PM peak are much lower than originally calculated. So sorry about that, but we got it right now. So the traffic pattern has also been a subject of discussion. The primary residents we would anticipate to be empty nesters and young professionals, as we've seen in demographic data. Those groups' primary trip destinations are commercial services, like I'm going to Lowe's, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the grocery store, or I'm going to work. So there's generally 2 types of destinations that those groups are headed to. And the traffic pattern to the primary destinations we think would be north on Brookford Road, but not south to Bunker Hill Road. So I did some informal testing just to see where my friend Google Maps would send me if I wanted to go from that location to Walmart on South Main, and it recommended that I take a left on Kernersville Medical Parkway and go to Shields Road. If I wanted to go to the Greensboro Airport, it recommended that I go left on Kernersville Medical to get on Interstate 40. But if I wanted to go to High Point University, then it would recommend Bunker Hill to Sandy Ridge. So it's not out of the question that people would be going there, but a lot of your in-town trips are going to be to Kernersville Medical Parkway, to 66, to points beyond, including Interstate 40 or other town roads. Stormwater has also been another topic of discussion. This map shows the USGS stream mapping with the development and the stormwater. So the west fork of the Deep River is at the right or the top of the map here. And the second one, well, this is the area for the stormwater device, the pond down here. So their plan shows that the water that's collected here from the development would flow into the west fork of the Deep River. So then it goes on this way. So this would be engineered to make that happen. But now the FEMA flood zone shows both creeks. They have slightly different configurations, which we thought was really interesting when we were looking at the streams as mapped on both, or from both organizations and entities. So they are slightly different. But FEMA allows 100% of the flood fringe to be filled. So the flood fringe is this dotted area within the white boundary. The dark blue that's solid, that's the flood zone. So the flood fringe is the area beyond the flood zone that could occasionally flood. So FEMA allows 100% of the flood fringe to be filled. But Kernersville's ordinance only allows 50% of the flood fringe to be filled. The developer is proposing 17.9% of the flood fringe to be filled. Again, this with the stormwater pond being located down here, it is shown on the plan to be engineered to get the water to the west fork of the Deep River. Staff's analysis in case K791 is that growth in the southeast part of Kernersville and Forsyth County has changed the demand for housing. There are increasingly more job centers in this area. Proximity to the interstate means more demand for housing. It's easier to get to Winston, it's easy to get to High Point, it's easy to get to Greensboro, and vice versa for people coming into Kernersville for the job center. The change in population has changed the demand for housing. With the aging population and single parents and workforce population typically do not desire the large lots with large homes. I know everybody's different, but that's kind of what the data is showing that we've seen. The proposed site plan is sensitive to the floodplain while providing a 30-foot buffer to the adjacent residential properties. The number of dwellings proposed is lower than what could be constructed in the proposed RM8 zoning district without the conditional use district. Staff's recommendation on the rezoning is move to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of the Town of Kernersville by rezoning the properties in case K791 from RS20 to RM8C. The said rezoning being consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, the Kernersville Development Plan, and further being both reasonable and in the public interest because of the following facts. The petitioner requests the conditional use district rezoning, allowing building architectural standards to be applied. This assures that the development addresses the development plan goal of establishing Kernersville as a unique, high-quality community within the triad. The petitioner has requested a conditional use district rezoning to allow a specific site plan to be considered to address the transitional character of the area and provide additional protection to the adjacent properties. The petitioner's submitted design incorporates watershed protection and will provide a sensitive landscape plan, which will help to improve the natural environment while providing a buffer to those adjacent properties. And with the site plan, we would also recommend approval subject to the conditions as presented in the staff report.
Okay.
And so
Any
I'd be happy to
questions?
answer any questions.
Hey, this is Christina. Could you go back to the slide with the FEMA flood zone?
Sure.
Because I had a question about that.
Okay. Oops, that was the wrong button. Hang on.
So I'm trying to understand, and I apologize for my lack of understanding, but the flood fringe looks like it overlaps with the proposed development. So could you explain what I'm looking at if I'm not quite following how the flood fringe would, filling that in would impact the development, the proposed development area?
So I'm not an engineer, and so I'm gonna give you the best answer that I can, and then I'll let Jeff jump in. The way I have the, low tech development terms that I've been taught are that the flood zone is going to flood, the flood fringe may flood. So on the edge of the development, the Army Corps of Engineers and the people who regulate the flood zones and the flood fringes will allow development in certain circumstances if these certain permits are applied for. So there's no development allowed in the flood zone in that dark blue area, but there would be development allowed in the flood fringe subject to approvals and review by other agencies.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up on that, so what the developer is proposing is 17.9% of the flood fringe to be filled, which will elevate any housing pad and take them out of the flood zone. So the developer will go through what's called a letter of map revision based upon fill. And so none of the homes will be located in the flood zone. The FEMA maps will be amended to reflect that 17.9% of fill activity. And as Catherine stated, FEMA allows 100% of that to be filled. Our regulations allow 50%. So the developer is well below the allowance for filling in that flood fringe. And the main reason is to we get some of those lots out of the floodway.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions to staff?
So Jeff, did you just, so they'll fill, meaning they will raise up those lots so that they're out of that fringe?
Correct. Yeah, they'll do fill work to elevate it, to do a letter of map revision. This is similar like in Caleb's Creek. Last couple of developments in Caleb's Creek had fill work to take the lots out. And so when you apply for a mortgage or apply for insurance, your new maps will reflect that you're not in a flood zone.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll declare the public hearing open. We'll first call on people who are in favor of the petition, then we'll call on people who are in opposition. And please remember when speaking to be concise, avoid repeating information already given by others, and that there is a delay for callers to be patched into our virtual meeting system by staff. So if you would be patient as we try to put callers through. We can only take one caller at a time. So anyone who is in favor of the petition should call in at this time.
Yep, very bottom.
So anyone who's in favor of the petition, call in at this time.
Chairman, we have one caller for the proposed amendment
Okay.
in favor.
Hi, good
Go
evening.
ahead.
My name is Amanda. Hi, good evening. My name is Amanda Hodiern. I am the attorney agent for the applicant Keystone Homes.
Chairman, we have one caller for the proposed amendment
Okay.
in favor.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Amanda.
And if you've got your
Amanda?
computer on and you're watching it on YouTube, the live stream is delayed, so you may want to mute what you're doing, and then that should take care of the sound.
Matthias,
Okay,
can you,
great.
Matthias, can you mute caller 7, please? That's where the feedback is coming from.
Okay.
That's also our caller, so they wouldn't be able to speak.
Okay, what's your name?
Mute you too.
Stephen Lane, okay.
Are we ready for Amanda?
Okay, I'm here. Should I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. State your name and address for the record if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. My name is Amanda Hodiern. My addresses are at 804 Green Valley Road in Greensboro, Suite 200, 27401. And I'm the agent for the owner. I'm a practicing attorney.
Okay.
Thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate y'all being here and hearing our matter under these unique circumstances, and twice, no doubt, after last month's false start. But I do want to take a few moments to hit a couple of points. I know Ms. Garner's presentation was very thorough, which I appreciate, and she hit a lot of great information. So I'm going to try not to be redundant, but I do want to highlight a few things. I want to first start out just backing up, and I want to reframe, the mentality of what this property is, the status of this property. I think we have a sort of traditional view that this is a big, sprawling, rural piece of property on the other side of the interstate that has been and should be treated differently, perhaps, because of that. But thank you, Ms. Garner. But in reality, and this slide helps to show that, if you could perhaps orient us, Ms. Garner, and show us where our property is so everyone can follow along. Thanks. Of course, in reality, because of all the changing conditions, which staff did a great job of detailing, this property is actually right smack in the location where it should and needs to support the employment center, the business center, as your zoning calls it, that has developed right around it, right beside it. So as with any, planning concept, you've heard of activity centers, I'm sure you've heard business center. You hear me say employment center right now. You want to prop those up and support them by rounding out the uses. We no longer in the planning world subscribe to the notion that everything needs to be separate and apart and siloed. Rather, we try to put the right mix of uses together that have a nice synergy to make all the others function at their best. And in an employment center, like you have here, we can talk about that use first. You've of course got your big medical campus, which is, I dare say probably one of your largest employers there in Kernersville. And then around that, you've got everything that springs up with the ancillary doctor's offices and the suppliers and the testing labs and so forth that are always companions to a hospital facility. And then you've got several other businesses that you all know are springing up along the Kernersville Medical Parkway because it's a thoroughfare. Anytime you have a big thoroughfare like this that connects points A to B and moves a lot of people, that's a great location for commercial users, and that's what's happening here, as expected and as all according to your town plans. So
now that that primary use has happened exactly as you wanted it to, and you've got a successful business center here, that needs to be fleshed out with the supporting uses, one of which is housing. Of course, a business center needs employees, and employees need a place to live where they can be the employees of the center in a way that, it works for them, so that they can get to work in a way that, allows them to have a work-life balance, a way that allows them to, know that they can be on call at the hospital, or allows them to know that they can be near the things in their community that are so important to them. And if you look around at this area, you look at the map, you guys I know are very familiar with your town, there's no housing here. So that is the natural progression of what needs to happen next to further make this a thriving and successful business center or employment center. I'll use those terms interchangeably, and keep everything going here as you want it to do. Other things you'll see spring up, if not already, are a little bit of supporting retail, so that when you're at work, you can go get a bite to eat at lunch, or you can drop your dry cleaning off and pick it up on the way home. You might see some daycares in the area, so that these employees have a place for their children to be while they're at work. And I'm sure you can all imagine and think of lots of examples around town and in places that you've been where you see this pattern of uses. And that's a nice synergy, and it happened for a reason. It doesn't happen by accident. And it's because all those things work together to establish a good land use pattern. In addition to making sound sense for those reasons, it's also a good transition. You heard Ms. Garner talk about this, and again, this is this is a tried and true planning concept that your staff, I think, works hard to implement, and we do that for a reason in planning. You don't want to have a big, intense use or epicenter of activity and then just drop off a cliff to very low intensity uses. The lowest of intensities, of course, being single family housing, low density single family housing. What you would rather do is feather out or taper off from that epicenter down to your more least intense uses. Again, you see here that we've got that epicenter, it's happening, it's humming, all that activity is on the ground, but you do not have that tapering off of uses yet. So again, this is just a very logical, natural progression of what you would want to see to flesh out that natural transition. The fact that the interstate goes in this location and, divides, if you will, the hospital complex and the business center from this proposed zoning of housing, I think is more form over function. I don't think it's relevant to the analysis. One, because if you think about it, if you want to have a nice bucolic single family setting, you certainly don't want to do that in the elbow of the interstate. Those home buyers who want that setting, don't want the shadow of the interstate looming above them in their nice big single family yard. So I think that demographic and that type of home buyer is probably not going to be attracted to this site for that reason. Instead, it lends itself to a more medium ground of housing types, which is what this proposal brings you with 3 different styles of attached housing, which of course brings with it a whole different demographic of buyer that's looking for different things when they choose to make the investment of a home and a place to live. So, and lastly, one point I want to make about just the positioning and the status of this property is that we can't forget it's a remnant property. It's not here out untouched on the outskirts, waiting to be touched by development. It exists in its status because it has already had development come and take from it. This property was originally a much larger piece intact, and the interstate came and bifurcated it. And these property owners, gave that up for the interstate for all of our betterment here in Guilford County and Kernersville and North Carolina. Again, later, that the property owners gave up land for the medical campus, the Kernersville Nivant campus that we all have been talking about tonight. So, this property exists in its state for a reason, and because it's already been touched by the growth and the changing conditions in Kernersville. So, as those conditions and circumstances have come to pass, they've built out, we've seen the success and the vibrancy that they brought to your town. Now the dust has settled, and I think this property in its remnant state has the opportunity to succeed to its highest and best use in what it is right now, which is a much lesser acreage, right on the shadow of the interstate and right on the fringe of a really booming employment center. If we could flip to the next slide, I do want to talk about housing, not just as a transition and not just as a supporting use to this employment center, but also as an asset to your community. Are we able to flip to the next slide?
Changed it to the current trends and data points, so it may just be delayed on the live stream that you're seeing.
Oh, thank you for that reminder. Yes, so I'll go ahead and start talking. Housing is a big issue right now, not just in Kernersville, but all over Guilford County, all over the state, and most places in the nation. And certainly you're no different. Just in my novice search today on Realtor.com, I found that there are just 27 townhomes on the market in Kernersville. Once you take out all the pendings and inactive listings, most of those are new construction, which aren't even move-in ready quite yet. And the average number of days on the market is 4 days. So you do have a very hot market. You have a high need, you have a high demand, and there's not enough supply. And that's just the way of the world right now in housing. I know we all hear it on the news. We hear it anecdotally from our friends and family. Some of you might even be experiencing it yourself. But there is an absolute need for housing. And inside that, what a project like this does is it not only offers that housing that is so necessary right now, but it offers the town of Kernersville optionality. You know, this proposal is not about trying to guess or predict what one type of buyer is going to do. It's about adding to that fabric of housing options in Kernersville. It's about creating different choices for all types of folks who want to live and continue to live in Kernersville, despite the fact that their circumstances may change, and for folks who don't yet live in Kernersville but would like to, either because of a job that's bringing them there. You know, I don't need to tell you all the employment opportunities that are in this area and bringing folks to this part of the county, and also for folks who might want to move for family or for all kinds of other reasons. But you need housing, as any community does, and you need housing choices. You don't want any one demographic to come to Kernersville and say there's nothing here for me. And right now, the townhome availability in Kernersville is not enough to serve the demand that you are seeing. And that demand is a good thing. And you're getting it from all types of buyers, not just the aging population, which 65 plus, according to our new census data, is the fastest growing demographic in Kernersville, but you're also getting it from young professionals who want to work and have pride of ownership and have a place to come home to that's theirs, but they don't want to, spend all of Saturday mowing the lawn or trimming the hedges. They want to do other things as well. Or you've also got folks who, want to travel on the weekends or want to put their money in other places. So they want to have an option where they can have a nice home, have all the accoutrements of a home that's theirs, but also have room in their budget to do other things that are important to them. So again, it's really all about optionality, and we're seeing buyers and the demographic across the board of people who this type of neighborhood meets those needs. And this is an option that is needed in the community. Again, going back to Novant, they announced just back in February that they're actually expanding that medical campus to include a new maternity ward and delivery facility, and also a new cath lab. So, that demand and need for employees and activity and people thriving in this area is not going anywhere. It's only going to increase. What I want to highlight about this specific proposal and this specific applicant, Keystone Homes, is that, I think that you are getting here with this proposal the best case scenario for how to meet this housing need, this transition need, and this highest and best use need for this piece of property. If we could switch to the next slides, please. I know Ms. Gardner touched on this in her presentation, and you saw a few photographs, but I wanted to delve into a little bit more about the type of neighborhoods and communities that Keystone proposes and hopes to have the opportunity to build here. I do want to start out by mentioning that Keystone is a local player. This is not somebody from out of town who read Kernersville's numbers on a demographics report and thought that sounded good and decided to throw a project here. This is a homegrown company. The principals are from and live here in the Triad, and they do communities in the heart of the Triad. And I'm sure you've probably seen them and are familiar with them in your travels around the Triad. So this is examples of real life Keystone communities. These are not stock photographs. These are not renderings. These are actual homes that they have built and that people are living in today. So when we show you these photographs and say this is what we're going to build, that's true. That's tested. It's road tested. This is not speculative. This is not somebody who hasn't done it before, not somebody who hasn't done it here in the Triad before. So I think that's a nice piece of evidence as to what you're going to get here. And also Ms. Garner talked about the fact that all the conditions she was able to apply to what she saw in this photograph are really equal your highest architectural standards. And Keystone's very proud of that and happy to offer that. So we can just kind of scroll through these at your leisure. These communities feel like home, and they mature into something that looks established and homely. You also see here that they don't just do straight paths for garages. You see the breaks and the planting strips between driveways, so you get that nice streetscape look. You see the mailboxes. You see the little posts in front of the mailbox light posts in front of the units. So you really just get a lot of touches here that go a long way to speak to the quality and the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The three styles that we're offering here, Ms. Garner mentioned this, but I do want to touch on that because Keystone's very proud of the type of community that it can offer in its offerings of types of homes. Again, that goes to optionality, and it goes to the types of buyers that you'll be able to, make it home in Kernersville, which I know is important to any growing city. So here you have the attached twin home, which is just the side-by-side attached for 2 units. You have the more traditional townhomes or row homes, if you will, which would be 3 or more. And then you have this pinwheel design of 4 units that are, like Ms. Garner said, sort of anchored around a common driveway. And then each of the 4 units is accessed from that interior. There you go. That's one of the pictures there. Is accessed from that interior courtyard, so that you have attached housing, but really there's very little overlap of common wall. So you have a very singular type of living environment while you're still able to be in this type of community that offers all the things that a buyer looking for this type of product wants to see. So again, you create a community that has a lot of vibrancy because you're going to get empty nesters looking to downsize. You're going to get first-time home buyers looking to experience the pride of ownership for the first time. You're going to get young working professionals who enjoy the type of lifestyle that this community offers. And all of that is anchored by a community with amenities to bring everybody together and to give folks that recreation opportunity and those opportunities to be in their neighborhood in a way that's not just in their own home or on their own lot, which of course all fosters good community and the type of residents and communities that I know a lot of people enjoy in Kernersville. The land use, we've talked about it being an appropriate transition. We've talked about it being an appropriate supporting use to your thriving employment center here. But it also, I submit to you, is a compatible land use for the area. I want to just back up for a minute and focus on the fact that we are talking about like to like here. We are talking about residential near other existing residential. So this is not a shoehorn or round peg, square hole kind of situation where where we're trying to squeeze in a completely divergent use into a well-established existing pattern. This is like to like. Yes, the style is different, and the neighborhood is a different type of neighborhood, but it is not the introduction of an entirely new use, which again, that's what makes it an appropriate transition, and that's what makes it a use that rounds out your land pattern as opposed to upsetting it. The impacts of a new community here, which are just part and parcel of change. Anytime there's change and new development, of course that's going to change the landscape, and we understand that. But we have been thoughtful with our site plan here, and you heard about the buffer yards and the streetscapes that Ms. Garner spoke to that this neighborhood provides. But we also are proud of the fact that it is a thoughtful design in being a good steward of the property, the way it lays out. You've got this big waterway feature, wetland feature, that floodway that runs through the middle of the property, and we're protecting that in the places where it has to be protected. And we are making sure to fit the development plans that you see here into the rules and requirements of FEMA, as the experts in this field have deemed necessary and the best practices for developing on these types of parcels. So you guys had a nice discussion about that with Ms. Garner, about how we are staying out of the required areas, the most sensitive areas, and we are only very, very minimally filling in on that floodway fringe in a way that allows us to protect the more sensitive parts of this property. Also want to talk about the fact that on the other side of the water feature, you see that entire acreage of designated committed open space. There's no planned development over there. There's no planned future development over there. That is intentionally being left open as, again, another way to mitigate the impacts of this new development on the existing community, and to make sure that it isn't asking for too much. And I'll just point out that that's not a holding pattern. If us or anybody wanted to come and develop that in the future, they'd have to come back forward through this process and bring a new plan that you or your successors would have to approve, and the neighbors would get the chance for this public hearing all over again. So that is very much a firm commitment to leave that space open. I also want to talk quickly about the development process and the sequence of events, and what this zoning request is and what it isn't. I know that this is the beginning of the process, and it seems like a big change to approve a rezoning. But actually, for those of us doing it every day, this is just the first step in a very long process. It is, the way I look at it is it's us asking you for permission to file plans to see if we can actually build this proposal. So in other words, right now the land use doesn't allow us to even file these plans. So right now we're asking for that land use to change, so that then we can come forward with the fully engineered site plan with the permits that you've heard about. And those are multi-jurisdictional. You've got NCDOT that we have to go through. You've got FEMA that we have to go through. You've got more TRC reviews with your own staff that we have to go through. And all of those people have to say yes. We have to meet all of their rigorous review and all of their regulations. And just because a rezoning happens doesn't mean that we absolutely get to go build this plan. So while yes, this site plan is offered to show you what we want to do and what we hope to be able to get the permission to do, if we are fortunate enough to receive a favorable outcome on this rezoning, that's not the end of the road for us. We still have a lot we have to do and prove and overcome to make sure that this is a safe and functional and viable plan for your community. With that, I will pause here to turn it over to others who might want to speak, and reserve the rest of my time for rebuttal. But I hope that the well thought out intentionality of this plan as a transitional use, as a supporting use for your thriving employment center, and as a highest and best use for a remnant property that is here, and has been holding and waiting to see what it's going to be in its current status. That I hope you'll agree that this makes sense and that it's reasonable for the circumstance that this piece of property finds itself in at this juncture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions of Amanda on the board? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor of the petition?
Chairman, we have no other callers in
Yeah,
favor,
that's Stephen.
but we do have someone against.
No, Stephen's for.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just been clarified that Steve is for as well.
So we have a caller or we do not have a caller?
We do have a caller.
Okay,
His name is Stephen Lane and he is now unmuted.
Hi, good. My name is Stephen Lane. My address is 1322 Windchime Drive, Colfax, North Carolina. I am the seller of the land to which the rezoning request pertains. This land has been in the Lane Revis family for 66 years, purchased in September of 1955 by my Aunt Ruth Lane Revis and her husband Otis. Ruth, their surviving spouse, deceased in 2013, nearly 8 years ago, but her estate cannot be distributed nor closed until this land is sold. It's understandable that residents nearby may feel uncomfortable. People generally prefer things to remain the same. Change involves uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncomfortable, but without change, though, there can be no progress. Ironically, without positive progress, things remain the same as desired, but tend to gradually decline. So, too many communities and towns, unfortunately, are examples of this fact. I think Hootie Earn may have touched briefly on some of these comments I'm going to make, and I'd like to be a little more specific. At one point, the contiguous land owned by my aunt and uncle exceeded 100 acres. They loved the property just the way it was, but the North Carolina Department of Transportation needed 20 acres for the new Interstate 40. Ruth and Otis, while certainly not their preference, they understood that for the greater good of many, some have to sacrifice, and there's no question as to the benefit that the interstate highway has provided to the town of Kernersville, the state of North Carolina, and, well, frankly, to the nation's travelers within the eastern seaboard. The interstate resulted in some of the land sitting north of I-40 and the remainder south. Most importantly, though, this did in fact change the ambience of the property from a quiet rural agricultural setting to undeniably a transitional zone. The remaining north 17 acres was subsequently needed for development of the Kernersville Medical Center. And at that point in time, Otis had already passed away, and the land was very dear to Aunt Ruth. She said it represented her life together with him. But again, she cared about the Kernersville community and recognized the importance of and need for that facility. And for that reason only did she sell that acreage in the interest of the town. And of course, I think many are clearly benefiting from the medical center and all the other development that's occurring on that acreage, as well as the adjoining acreage. In addition, some of the remaining southern portion of her land was taken by the town to accommodate the medical center's requirement of, I think, what was described as a sound sewage collection and disposal system. But again, Aunt Ruth accepted the change for the sake of progress, so she would have preferred things to stay the same. I'd like to close my comments by sharing information that I'm hesitant to, may or may not be appropriate, but I think it's important for the planning board to hear because it is the truth. Immediately after Ruth's death, I had to obtain an appraisal to establish basis in the land for tax purposes. After submitting his report to me, a highly respected appraiser within the Piedmont Tribe community commented to me that he would have appraised the land at a much higher value had it not been in Kernersville. I asked him why, and he said, well, major residential developers in the Triad generally avoid Kernersville because of the history of resistance to rezoning requests. And frankly, I bristled at his comment, told him that might have been true in the past, but I do not believe that represents the town of Kernersville presently, and the town is much more progressive when it comes to decisions that result in positive change. So, board members, I respectfully ask you to prove that appraiser wrong. Please move to approve the rezone and use plan change, and so doing, benefit the greater community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay. Anyone else wish to speak in favor of the petition?
Chairman, we have no other callers in favor.
Okay, then at this point, I'll ask for anyone in opposition to the petition to call in, please. Do we have anyone?
Matthias, are you patching somebody through?
We have a few people calling. We're patching them in now.
Okay. Okay, so do I go back to the regular?
Hello.
Hello.
Go ahead and speak.
Yes, this is Eric Compton. Jeff, can I get somebody to put my PowerPoint up for me?
Yes, Catherine has it here.
Are you calling the Kernersville Planning Board?
Yes, this is Eric Compton. I live at 1590 Slate Road. I had a PowerPoint sent in earlier, and I'd like to see if someone can go ahead and put it up on the screen for me.
And Eric, just a reminder, there's about a 30-second delay between what you're seeing and what is being posted. So up now is the Eric Compton presentation.
Go ahead, Mr. Compton.
Okay. Well, first I'd like to say that I apologize. Me and Jeff were supposed to meet and have a site on-site review of my problems and concerns, and but I had actually came down and was sick, and so I couldn't meet with him. So the PowerPoint has some of the things that we had already discussed, but I wanted to bring up that the attorney and the Revis family both live out of the area. Neither one are here and live in this surrounding area. So when they're talking about traffic and residents and the buffer and all that, they're coming from a person or a outside view, not from inside Kernersville here, that is relevant to our area. I have my name and address up there, and also my number and email address. So if anybody has any questions or would like to come out and visit this actual site with me, I'd be happy to meet with them. Can you go to the next slide, please? This 1645 Brookford Road adjoins my family's land, which is 1693 Brookford Road. There are many problems with this, rezoning area. The contractor is proposing to fill in a 100-year floodplain area that I've seen flood 3 times in the last 5 years. And I have some pictures to prove this. And again, if I can get somebody to change that slide for me. They're wanting to put the retention ponds in an area that is below the grade. So even once they fill it up, the area is still going to flood. And so the area that they're showing on their diagram where the water is supposed to run to the creek is going to back up into our property like it has numerous times over the last couple of years. The development of the Medical Center Parkway has already caused a lot of flood damage to our property. And one of the reasons is because they continue to disturb the wetland areas around there, which is a filter to the pond, to the streams and the creeks, and it slows the water down. And by having the storm water from Medical Center Parkway now running straight through underneath and huge culverts underneath Medical Parkway and underneath 40, it is coming onto the property at an excessive rate that hasn't been there before. I've lived in this area on this property for 50 years, and we've never had the flooding like we've been having. If I can get somebody to go to the next slide again, please, I would appreciate it. Once somebody, even if they're only filling in 17 or 18% of the floodplain area, that's only going to make this situation worse because you're still taking out that designated area for the water to go, and you're condensing it into a more tighter area. And if I can get to the next slide, please. The next slide has a picture of an area where the sewer line runs on our family's property. And just like the Revis family, our property was condemned and taken for the greater good to put the sewer line on. Some of the problems that we've had is since they've done this, and again, they continue to build on 66 and on the Medical Center Parkway area, we're experiencing tremendous flooding. And when the next picture comes up, you'll see the area. This is where the sewer line runs, and the manhole cover gets to be around 3 foot underwater. And it's like this all the way down this area, which backs up to and is part of the area that is in question of being rezoned, the Revis farm. Once this happens, the vent holes and the manhole covers are 2 to 3 foot underwater, and so it causes problems, and the sewer then comes up to the top of the property and floats out. And you can see this house right here is just a few feet from being damaged from water. The creek that runs through here normally is just a few inches, and you see that same thing right here. If you look into the center to the left, you'll see the actual manhole cover there in this picture, and on the right-hand side, you see how heavy it is. The area that is in question is straight past this picture here and goes straight on further down. So the more they dump the water and the more they develop that area and fill in the floodplain and damage the wetland area, it's going to cause the water to back up more on our property. And this is significant water damage. If I can get to the next picture, please. Next slide. We've complained to the counties and the city about the damage to the sewer line by the water is actually so intense when it rains that it's changing the direction of the creeks and is now washing and going out into our pasture areas and is within a few feet, maybe 15 feet or so, of undermining the sewer line. And when the next slide comes up, it shows a better picture of it. On that next slide, it also shows, you'll see a straight line path of this flat area, and past it and to the left is where they're proposing putting the retention pond. And you'll see that, all this area is 3 foot
of water above this manhole cover. And so you think that water is not going to run over that retention pond? I don't care what an engineer says. Here's proof that this is going to happen. And all that sediment from that retention pond is going to back up onto our property and cause more damage. And this is just one of the problems. If I can get that next slide, has anybody? There you go. So you can see the sewer line where the manhole cover is runs at an angle to the right. And to the right, you'll see where the creek bank has already washed out. And we used to have a property line marker there, about 8 feet more to the right. And that much land has washed out over the last year. It's continued to be a dangerous situation when we mow around it. And it's happening, you know, the amount of water to the normal basis on a normal day is only a few inches thick, a few inches deep. But when we get any kind of amount of rain, it backs up and fills this area up. And so if you continue looking straight through here, you'll see the trees to the left and a little building. And right behind that is where the proposed sediment pond is going, retention pond. And you can see, you know, the pictures, I don't have a picture, but I do have it. I just don't have it on this particular PowerPoint that shows that whole area underwater up to this building. And this is not in the flood zone. That is the crazy thing that I want you to understand is this is not in the flood zone. So you're going to allow a contractor to build up an area to protect a new house, which is going to then cause our property, our family's property, and all the property along this creek to now start to flood. Which takes me on, thank you for the next slide, which takes me to this area contains an important wetland. That low density residential that is zoned for now would be perfect if they just built normal residential houses that would fit our area. It would fit our landscape. It would fit with what we have here. That would be the best buffer between the Medical Center Parkway development. 40 is our buffer, and then you're back into the low density that we have now. It would allow that wetland to stay, so when we have future development on the Medical Parkway, it would help control and slow the water down, act as a filter, so it won't just overrush the sewer line area here. And if you'll go back to the slide that you were at before, you can forward the slide again. The legal definition of a wetland, according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, is a wetland are areas that are inundated or saturated by surface or groundwater at a frequency and duration sufficient to support, and that under normal circumstances do support a prevalence of vegetation typically adapted for life in saturated soil conditions. So if you could go to the next slide once you get to that one. You know, what does this mean? Well, to have a wetland area, you must have enough water to keep the soil wet. It doesn't really matter if your location in North Carolina or the shape of the land or the types of soil. You know, it's based off of, and if you could go to the next slide here, that's the legal definition that I wanted to make sure you saw of what a wetland is and how important it is to contain in the drainage area that is affecting us. So when you get to the next slide, it's going to talk about what does this mean. And so I actually visited this area. I grew up on that farm. We used to, the family farm here used to lease that property where 40 is now. So I'm very familiar with it being a wetland and what it used to do. And again, the slide keeps going backwards instead of forward. If I can go again forward.
We're on a delay with the live streaming, so when you tell me to go forward, I'm trying to go forward, but I think you're on a different time than I am. So right now I have
it keeps going back.
On your property, you might have a wetland if.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, if you walk around the property, you might have a wetland if you sink in the mud, you have a stream or river, spring or seep near your property, you have standing or flowing water on top of the ground for a long time or multiple times a year, you have low areas that hold water for a long time, and you have leaves on the ground that are stained a darker color than in other areas. So if you can go to the next slide, please. This is a picture that was taken 500 feet from the creek. And as you can see, there's standing water. And that standing water basically stays on the ground year round. The picture to the left shows the mud, which meets the color and definition of the wetland. If you can go on to the next two slides, where it talks about the trees also meet the definition of the wetland. When you're looking at it, you'll see that the trees are wet soil trees that only grow in that kind of condition. Same with the plants. If you just continue to go forward with the presentation, you'll notice that the plants are only native to the wetland area. And I have some more pictures of those to kind of prove that, this whole area, this whole bottom down there, and this is actually taken on the Revis farm. This section right here is actually taken on the Revis farm. So you can see that area is a wetland area. So as we go through this, it's so important that what our area, what our community is some of the things we're complaining about is the amount of water that's already damaging our property. And now you're wanting to allow a builder to come in and fill in a 100-year floodplain plan that has already started to flood this whole area that's not even considered a floodplain 3 times in the last 5 years. And again, Brookford Road has had significant damage from the water running over. Our homes are starting to get threatened. Then the next part I want to talk about is Ms. Garner, during the very first presentation, the last meeting, commented about the millennials, and they highlighted more about the millennials during the first presentation than they did the second one. But she said that millennials were no longer looking for homes and land, that they wanted townhomes and cluster homes. She also referenced the North Carolina DOT about the traffic on Brookford Road. And so I pulled up, basically just typed in millennials and their home surveys. And the very first thing that pulled up was a survey, and I went through it. And what it basically said was 71% of millennials plan to move for a better home. 59% want more privacy and more space. And if we'll just continue to flow with the PowerPoint, please. It says that 64% want to grow their family. Millennials are currently single, and marriage rates among young adults are low, but they're looking to plan in the next 5 years to have more kids and to seek more space. It says that basically the single family home remains the ideal home for them, with more space and better housing. So 61% want more space, not a smaller townhome. The last slide on that mentions that millennials are headed for suburbs and urban areas. So, 48% are looking for suburban areas, 38% are looking for urban areas. So building a home, this same type of development is all over Old Salem Road, which is just a mile down the road. And we have all these other areas that are being built like this, but our area is a single family dwelling, large lot areas. And I know that the attorney spoke and said that, she pulled up information that showed that, the housing market would support this. But here in our area, single family homes in this community sell in the exact same day. So there would be no reason why they couldn't develop that area in a single family, 1 to 2 house per acre lot versus the kind of building that they're looking at doing. When we look at the North Carolina Department of Transportation traffic counter, when it comes to that slide, you'll see that there's to the right-hand corner of the slide, you'll see where they actually place the counter. And then it shows in 2002, like she already stated, there was 580 counted per day, and that was probably because they were building and doing some construction on the parkway, the medical parkway, and that probably stopped so much traffic going through there in 2002. But if you look at the latest of 2019, it was 450, but that's down on this lower end. And so to get an accurate count, you would basically need to put a counter on both ends, one on the medical side of Medical Parkway of Brookford Road, and then one on the Bunker Hill Sandy Ridge side. Because I can speak from experience, that is a major cut-through road. Everybody comes, if they're going to High Point or Sandy Ridge Road, they go down this back road to avoid the backups on 40 and the backups on 66 that's already occurring. So everybody goes down Bunker Hill Sandy Ridge Road via Brookford Road. The last part of the presentation talks about the truth about the projected target buyers and the ability of Brookford Road to handle the additional traffic. Until the new traffic report can really be, a current traffic report can really be put in place and by the other presentation from the town on page 4, where it says 1,376 trips a day is what's estimated from that one neighborhood. When you add the additional 500, that's over, somewhere around 2,000 trips a day just on that one road. And I challenge y'all to ride up and down that road and see if you think that's going to handle 2,000 more vehicles. It's a very curvy, narrow road, and we're already experiencing a lot of problems. So when you add that additional traffic, and that is just by their estimation, the homeowners, that's not including visitors, Amazon and FedEx is going to increase, people doing maintenance out there. All that traffic is going to increase to way over 2,000 vehicles a day. The current zoning would be better suited for this area for the targeted buyer group, which, the first presentation, the targeted buyer group was millennials. Now they changed it to 65 and older. Probably because we mentioned this during the last presentation, and so they changed it to meet their needs. But the big thing is to maintain that area of wetland to keep it intact. So we don't have more continual flooding and damaging of the existing homes. Like I showed you in those pictures, I beg you, don't sacrifice our homes to go into a floodplain and we have to get flood insurance, to sacrifice and save a new developer who is wanting to change a 100-year floodplain, who is wanting to change the wetland. It's already been done on Medical Parkway, and that development is not going to change. It's going to continue to grow on Medical Parkway. That's a fact. But leave that wetland and that floodplain intact so it protects the rest of the community. And one other thing I'd like to say is a lot of the residents in this area really wanted to speak, and they want to have a face-to-face meeting. It's very difficult to get your point across over a YouTube video where there's a delay and there's a lot of problems. It would be a lot better if nothing else, if you delayed your vote until you could have an in-person meeting where more of the community who felt more comfortable speaking in face-to-face rather than on the phone would have that opportunity. But again, I challenge you to come out, and you've got my number, you've got my information. I'll be happy to take you to on-site visit on our property, on my family's property, so we don't have to go onto the Revis farm. but just to show you the amount of damage we're having from this flooding onto a sewer line that is causing problems, that you're wanting to add more damage and more problems onto existing citizens. That's all I have right now, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay. Any other speakers in favor of the petition? And I'd like to remind everybody, please, to be concise and avoid repeating what other people have said. The board are intelligent people and heard what was said. So please be as concise as you can and don't bring up what other people have talked about, please. Do we have any other people in favor of the petition?
Chairman, there were 2 other people who want to speak against the petition, and we're waiting for them to come back now.
In opposition, yeah. Go ahead.
They're patching them through right now. Go ahead, caller.
Oh, do we have a caller on the line?
Yes, sir. This is Aaron Griffith. I live at 1723 Brookford Road, and I just
Okay.
wanted to make a few comments.
All right, Mr. Griffith, if you don't mind, be as concise as you can. And if someone else has already brought up what you talked about, there's no need to repeat it to us, okay? So go ahead.
Okay. I just mainly wanted to throw out the traffic that's going to increase from building 188 units in this place. There's approximately 75 houses between Medical Parkway and Bunker Hill Sandy Ridge Road that currently feed into Brookford Road. And with the traffic count now, it's increased since the Medical Parkway's built up. And now you're basically going to have 2.5 times the amount of housing than what's there currently. I concur with what Mr. Compton said earlier, that this would much better be suited for single-family dwelling residents and not the multifamily. The traffic is a major concern. I've lived here my whole life, and I really don't want something that's going to generate this much activity to be put in a location that's proposed. I realize there are housing needed, and my parents currently live in this kind of community, but to me, this is not the place to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Griffith. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Mr. Griffith.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in opposition to the petition?
We have no callers at this minute, but we're waiting on a previous caller to call back.
Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes to see if there's anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition. Okay, do we have any speakers?
No.
We're trying to patch them in right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Untitled.
Hello.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, this is Rick Hall at 1810 Volta Road, and just wanted to, express the concerns. It's a little different for us. We live on the other side of the Eric here, and a lot of the same concerns. But the sediment pond that's going to be built in the corner, and I wish we could pull the slide up to look at it. It actually is going to feed into the corner of our property there, and with that amount of water, is just going to be, it's going to take a lot of our property potentially with that, and God only knows what's going to happen downstream and back upstream. But we would like the rest of them would like for somebody to come out and just look at it firsthand and see what impact that we could have that would cause. And then also potentially we're starting to get letters about flood insurance and different things like that. So it kind of sets the tone that this could be potentially a bigger problem later on down the road, that the developer has no interest in the infrastructure pieces there to build it, and everything else around it just kind of survive on your own there. So, but just the concern around that piece with the amount of water and the way the creek turns around our property off of Volta, and potential of excess flooding to our property. And that's our concern.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Any questions from the board?
Thank you, guys.
For your comments. Thank you.
To our property. And
Matthias, do you have anybody else?
we do.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello?
Yes. You'll state your name and address.
Yes, this is Lorraine Smith, and I live at 1708 Slate Road.
Okay, Ms. Smith, again, we ask that you be as concise as you can. And if somebody else has already mentioned what you'd like to talk about, there's no need for you to repeat it to us, okay? So go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Yes, sir. So I've heard what everybody else has said, and I just simply want to ask for you guys to consider maintaining the integrity of the neighborhood. I think we all understand that the land can be developed and probably should be developed. We definitely don't want to stand in the way of telling somebody what to do with their property. But I just ask that you guys, if you haven't had the opportunity yet, to come out and visit our neighborhoods and see what the housing looks like currently, and just maintain the neighborhood that we've created here. It is a special place in Kernersville. And I'd also like to address the concern about millennials and boomers and what they want. I am a millennial, and I live in this neighborhood, and there's plenty of millennials who would like to live in a neighborhood like ours, not necessarily beside four other people in a building. But anyway, I do appreciate your time. I ask that you take into consideration what everybody has said tonight. And I also want to express my one concern as far as the rezoning. And I understand the calculations that have been done, but I also understand the rest of the land. If it is developed that's being proposed in the future, it would end up being a lot more than the current calculations stand. If you're able to develop on the other half of it, there's potential for an exponential amount of homes there. So anyway, I appreciate your time and just ask again that you maintain the integrity of our neighborhood and appreciate it like we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any questions of the board? Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Do we have any other callers in opposition?
Chairman, we had one caller in opposition whose call was dropped, and we have one caller for a rebuttal.
Okay.
The petitioner Amanda. Are you accepting rebuttals?
Not at this point. We're still in the opposition. Then we'll move into rebuttals. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak in opposition?
We had one other person who we're waiting to call back.
We have one more caller.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hello, caller.
T, any update on the caller?
We're in the process of merging them in.
Hello.
Go ahead. Go ahead, caller.
Not yet.
We're still transferring them in.
Hello?
Hello, caller.
Can you hear me?
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, this is Jeffrey Slate. I live at 1619 Bunker Hill Sandy Ridge Road.
Okay. Mr. Slate, let me just remind you, if I could, to be concise in your comments. And if someone's already talked about what you want to talk about, there's no sense in repeating it back to us, okay?
Okay. Yes, but if you will bear with me with a little bit of what I've experienced tonight with the call-in. I know it is repeating what Eric said, but yeah, I was cut off twice, and it's terrible trying to get through, and a lot of people would feel more comfortable speaking face-to-face. From that, I'll say that the lady that spoke the first time, there's no way to guarantee that the traffic from this development won't turn south on Brookford Road. And I feel like that will be the case, that the majority of them will to reach Bunker Hill, to reach Greensboro. They will take Bunker Hill Sandy Ridge Road as a bypass for 40. If they was to go out to the Parkway, I just wonder, when that Parkway empties out onto Macy Grove Road isn't much better than Bunker Hill Sandy Ridge Road. Actually, it's worse. So I mean, yeah, you got a nice 4-lane on the Medical Park, but the other end of it is not very pleasant either. The first map that I saw of the flood fringe that they talked about, that this development will be taking only 17% of that flood fringe area. I was just wondering, I'm not in the know of FEMA or anything, but I've seen a pretty good area on that map that looked like to me from that map, it took more than 50%. I would ask that you would go back and take a look at that map, please, because, that water flow is only going to flow as much as the smallest area. And there's one area that really juts out into that flood fringe. If you would take a look at that. And that's basically what I got to say. I think Eric done a good job, and he covered pretty much everything else. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Slate from this board? Okay, thank you, Mr. Slate.
Yes, sir.
Any other callers in opposition?
Chairman, he was our last caller in opposition, and we still have Amanda on the line for rebuttal.
Yeah, well, we're going to go to rebuttals as soon as we have. So there's no more callers for opposition to the petition.
There are no more callers in opposition.
Okay, now, you have a caller online who wishes to, in support of the application for rebuttal?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, go ahead and bring them in. And while she speaks, now go ahead and bring them in.
Amanda, you're on.
Now go ahead and bring them in.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Thank you for allowing me this quick follow-up rebuttal, and I will be brief with your time. I just want to hit a couple of points that we heard, mainly just to make sure that we're all staying on the right page and talking about accuracy with our terminology, so we make sure we're doing oranges to oranges here. There's a lot of talk about the site plan considerations of how the floodway, floodplain, wetlands, flood fringe will be managed. And those are actually precise terms, and we need to be precise with them. So there's absolutely no proposal to change the floodplain or the floodway. Again, the only intimation of any type of modification that this very preliminary site plan even thinks about is a very minor fill to the flood fringe, which is allowed by FEMA. Now, it is allowed as a process. It doesn't mean that it's automatically just done. We would have to submit a map modification request. It's the LIMER that Mr. Ling spoke about. So that's not a foregone conclusion. FEMA has the ultimate authority there to decide if it's appropriate and decide if all of the implications of it are worthy of the criteria in this instance. So just because we ask for it doesn't mean it will be granted. Also want to talk about, there's a lot of discussion about this being wetlands and how it's being treated. And of course, again, what is and is not wetlands is not up to us. It's something that we just get to have an opinion on and and just go about our day. That's something that we have to have professionals come out and do a delineation on site. They have to submit that delineation to the Army Corps of Engineers, and then the Army Corps of Engineers comes out and verifies it. So again, that is a third-party analysis that's out of our hands. Our state has experts in that, and we have to do what they say. So yes, we are absolutely not debating what is and is not wetland, and we will absolutely abide by the delineated wetlands on this site. Similarly, again, you know, making sure that we are giving credence to the proper authorities and the proper decision makers on these items. With the traffic, neither us nor you nor anybody on this call has to be responsible for guessing what the traffic is going to do. Fortunately, you know, NCDOT is the final arbiter on that decision. We'll submit our plans to them. They'll review it. They'll look at it under their expert analysis and their traffic modeling modes that they have and that they are trained in, and they will use their expertise to tell us what we can and can't do. And that is what rules the day on all of these items. NCDOT, the Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA, your town engineering staff for our drainage calculations. All of these things are very micro site planning considerations. And frankly, they're not what's on the table tonight. I know that it's tantalizing and difficult to ignore a site plan that's in front of us, but this is not a site plan approval. This is simply a rezoning request. It's a land use analysis question that's before us tonight, and all of these other matters will have their day to be fully vetted. So we're simply showing you a site plan of what we would like to do and what we would like to ask permission to do in the future. Not actually asking for those permissions tonight because we don't have those experts in front of us at the table yet. But if we get over this part of the process, that comes next. And those experts and those people who, again, are not part of our development team will have the opportunity to tell us what we can and can't do. And we'll have to abide by that. Even if this rezoning is granted, if some of those folks come back and say, no, we're not issuing you that permit, then that's that. And it doesn't matter that we were able to get it rezoned. Again, though, just to make sure we're talking about apples to apples, I do want to point out on the water issues, if Ms. Garner could go back to her slide that showed the mapping of the streams. The stream that runs through our property and that would be most affected by any development we do is not the same stream that runs through the first speaker's property. Mr. Compton's property, I believe. Forgive me if I'm saying your name wrong. So, you know, we need to just be careful again that we are not mincing our site plan considerations here and overgeneralizing with conclusions that haven't been fully vetted out by the actual experts and engineers that have that job and responsibility. I also just want to reiterate, this is not multifamily. It's a single family attached type of home in 3 different styles. And really there isn't a targeted buyer group. Yes, we have specifications and things that we see in the market that tend to be appealing to active adults or to young employees. But this is simply a community that the market tells us will perform well here. We're not trying to, again, guess what any one specific type of buyer wants. It's about making sure that any buyer who wants this option has it in Kernersville. It's not about trying to guess what a millennial will do or what a retired professional will do. It's about making sure that this option exists in Kernersville for anyone who wants it. And all the speakers are absolutely right. All different types of demographics and people and generations want different things. The point is making sure they have it. And the last point I want to make is, again, because what I want to leave you with is that this is about land use. It's a land use question, not a site planning question. So ultimately the question is this land use appropriate here? And I want to revisit that discussion and highlight the reasonableness and the appropriateness of it for the reasons I've already said, and I won't waste your time reiterating them. But also I want to remind you that, you know, there's a reason that in planning and in housing and in development, you know, we've evolved into some different options other than just your 1 to 2 acre residential single family lots. Again, that is an absolutely essential piece of the puzzle to have in any community, and no community would be vibrant without it. But the other options are strong too, and also necessary. They take advantage of the infrastructure costs and expenses that you guys have undertaken with sewer and road extensions. When you have those types of infrastructure allocations in place, it's appropriate to build at densities and styles that take advantage of that cost. When you have a piece of property that's eaten up with a lot of environmental features like this that need to be saved for various reasons, it's important to be thoughtful about how you use the rest of that property. And, you know, frankly, platting out the property from end to end with every lot you can get on it is not really the best management practice anymore for those types of property. Rather, the idea is to cluster and focus the development on the pieces of property that can keep you out of those significant areas and still allow you to utilize your property. So I think that there are a myriad of reasons that this different housing type transition here, and I hope you'll agree that this is an eminently reasonable request. And I thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you, Amanda. Is anybody in opposition to the application who wishes to call in for a rebuttal?
We have some calls coming in.
Is Eric ready?
He's not patched in yet. We're in that process right now.
Matthias, any update?
We have Eric Compton on the line now.
Yes, thank you again for taking my call back. Amanda had just made a statement about that creek that runs through their property that they're wanting to change the zoning on. She's absolutely correct. It is not the same creek, but they run side by side. And what happens is the water overflows the creek banks on that side, fills up the whole wetland area, fills in our creek, and backflows all the way up to the pictures that I showed you, which is all the way up past Brookford Road, up behind our house, up behind Slate Road, and all the water backs up from the amount of water coming from the Medical Center Parkway that runs underneath and through the Revis Farm property that's looking to be rezoned. All of that water comes from their property. And that's why we continue to maintain the fact that if you change that, you fill in that floodplain area, it is going to make the water in a more constrictive area that is going to come more onto our side. You put the retention pond down below, the creek in that area can't handle the water that's on it now. It is just going to overflow the retention pond and the little stream they have going from the retention pond to the stream that's on their property. So again, we have a person who has never set foot on this property, has no idea what she's talking about, trying to and sway y'all's vote on a piece of property that she has no idea than what's on paper. But I've shown you the pictures of the floods, the pictures of the sewer line being overflown. This is why I called back, is to make sure that you understand she's absolutely right. It's not the same creek, but the problem comes from that creek. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any more callers?
Chairman, we also have Stephen Lane.
Good evening. This is Stephen Lane again, the seller of the property. Just wanted to make a correction on the comment Mr. Compton made that the seller is not a resident of Kernersville. Well, he didn't say the seller. He said the Revis family. I'm the seller on behalf of the family, but there are 21 beneficial owners of that property, a number of which are lifelong Kernersville residents, one of which is a entity in perpetuity. It's a nonprofit, so I think there might have been some misstatements there. And also would like to point out that some of the, at least a couple of the callers in opposition, Slate Road and Bunker Hill, they're neither inside of the property, they're not on Brookford Road, they don't have to use that road if they don't like the traffic. So we would, with respect, would ask folks to who have a relevant in this opposition, not just to state opposition for the sake of opposition. That's all the comment I had to make. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, any other callers?
Chairman, we do not have any other callers at this time.
Okay, at this point, I'll declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board? Any questions from the board?
Catherine, we are just voting on the site plan, or not the site plan, but the rezoning, correct? The site plan, all that stuff is coming at a later date.
No,
So
you'll
we're voting
actually,
on rezoning and the site plan.
yeah, the rezoning, the site plan, you'll make recommendations on both of those, and then also the Kernersville development plan amendment.
If I'm sensing reluctancy on the board, do you want to talk about it, or you ready to make motion, or what?
So I think we've had a lot of information to process here. Over a public hearing and a half, I guess. So I'm trying to absorb it.
Jim, will this go before the Board of Aldermen after us?
Of course, yes. Ours is just we're trying to develop a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. That's what we're doing.
And we're doing this in two motions, right?
We're doing what?
We're doing this in two motions. We need a motion for development plan and a motion for the rezoning.
Well, that's up to you. We can either do it in one motion, or we can do it in two. The motion could include.
Staff would prefer a motion on the Kernersville development plan to be separate from one on the rezoning and the site plan, just for keeping apples and oranges apart.
And I guess that's a little where I'm confused. The lady kept talking about it was only a rezoning. So That's where I got a little, my apologies.
Chris, could you repeat your question? I didn't understand. I couldn't hear you.
Somebody's got some feedback. I was confused from the lawyer that kept saying it was just a rezoning. It wasn't the site plan that was coming later. But so I guess that's where I got confused. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
Tonight is both the rezoning and the site plan.
Yes, you will make a recommendation on the rezoning and the site plan. Both of those will go to the Board of Aldermen for final decision. But then the site plan comes in for a technical review at the staff level. So I think when she was talking about some of the site plan coming later, it was the technical numbers that are reviewed by the town engineer, NCDOT, and the other like technical aspects that aren't covered during a conceptual rezoning and site plan approval.
So the first part, though, is an amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan.
Correct.
That's not the site plan.
No, that's the future land use plan.
Right, so we need a motion for this Kernersville Development Plan to accept that as presented. I'll make that motion, but only on the Kernersville Development Plan change.
I'm sorry, what's your motion, Steve?
Making a motion to only on the update to the Kernersville Development Plan that is part of this whole transaction.
Which is the site plan, is that what you're saying?
No,
No.
I don't think so. I thought the first thing we were doing was updating the Kernersville Development Plan, and then we were going to see a motion, do a motion on the actual rezoning.
I understood.
Now you-
I understood.
Now you
earlier.
got me confused.
Am I correct in understanding that earlier they said that those two, this rezoning and the land use plan amendment would be handled together? Is that correct?
We got a rezoning and a site plan, but we got to make a recommendation.
So
The Kernersville Development Plan and the rezoning piece together. So you'll take two votes, one on the Kernersville Development Plan amendment, and then the second will be a recommendation on the rezoning with this proposed site plan.
So the first one is the rezoning changes the Kernersville Development Plan, is that what you're saying?
The first vote that the board should take is on the amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan as proposed in item 5C, case KDP 57.
Does that change the rezoning?
No, that vote will come next.
I asked, in the past, when we've had to do remote meetings, we had to wait to vote.
The new law changed all that. We don't have to wait anymore with the new law, the 160D. Jeff?
So Jim, did you make a motion to approve the land use plan amendment separately?
Yes, that's exactly right.
I will second that.
5C.
I will second that motion, Jim.
Well, wait a minute, let's back up. I gotta understand what we're doing here. Because in the staff report, it says we need to have a rezoning recommendation and a site plan recommendation.
Not correct.
That's correct, but sir, that's under 5D and we're on case 5C for KDP 57. So the motion has been made to update the Kernersville Development Plan under case 5C on the agenda. The motion was made to update the Kernersville Development Plan as proposed by Mr. Frydenberg and seconded by Mr. Hutchins.
So we gotta have 3 votes tonight then.
You can take 3 votes or you can do the rezoning and site plan combined.
Okay, all right, that's what I want to know. All right. So we have a motion for approval of the land use plan changes in KDP -57. We have a second. Correct?
Yes, Mr. Hutchins made the second.
Okay. So any further discussion of the board? All right, we'll take a roll call vote on land use plan amendment. Scott South, Nathan Meyer, I'm sorry.
No.
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 Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Frottenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Christina, I think you're wrong.
I'm sorry?
Christina, your mic is off. There you go.
Okay, my bad. Yes, this is Christina. My answer is yes.
So you're a yes vote?
Correct.
Okay. Chris Oatman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and I also vote, so motion carries. Now, we have left a rezoning recommendation and a site plan recommendation. We can do them in two separate votes, or we can do them in one vote, whichever the board feels appropriate.
This is Christina. I'd like to do them separate.
Separate, okay. So you want to have a motion either on the rezoning or on the site plan?
I'll make a motion to rezone, to approve the rezoning, but I agree, I'd like to take them separately.
So your motion is to recommend that the rezoning be approved.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, there's a second?
I'll second it. Freidenberg.
Okay. Any further discussion of the board? Okay, Nathan Meyer.
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
No. Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Frottenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oatman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and I too vote yes, so motion is approved. Now, final is a recommendation on the site plan.
I'll make a motion to deny the site plan.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Nathan.
Okay, Nathan second, so the motion is to deny the site plan. Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Luann Davis,
Yes.
it's a yes. Jim Frottenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oatman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and I vote no, so but the motion carries. Very good. Thank you, everyone. So the next item on Our public hearing is text amendment. Curtis Swisher, agent for the town of Kernersville, for a proposed zoning text amendment of the Unified Development Ordinance, amending Chapter B. Amendment addresses clerical errors in the 2021 text amendments, addressing the North Carolina 160D statutory changes, as well as amends the overlay districts to update road names and alignments to match existing conditions. Zoning docket KT 267.
I move for the approval.
Wait a minute, let's see if there's a staff report first.
I second.
I'll make this very quick. So the purpose of this amendment does clarify one clerical error in the 2021 North Carolina General Statutes 160D amendment, and then also amends the overlay districts to update the road names and alignments to match existing conditions. If you look at it now, it references Business 40. Those have all been updated to Salem Parkway and US 421, as well as the changes to South Cherry and South Main there with the new Lowe's shopping center. So I think it's pretty good that out of all of the 160 text amendments, we had only one clerical error. So kudos to everybody for that. And then this does clean up some overdue language on changing Business 40 to Salem Parkway. So staff's recommendation is approval of the text amendment as presented in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone, if you'd like to speak in favor of the petition, please call in now.
Sorry.
I believe we have no callers, Jim.
No callers, okay. Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Call in now. We have no callers on the line.
I believe we have no callers.
I'll declare the public hearing closed. Okay, Margaret, now.
I move for the approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval is presented by staff.
Chris Oakman seconds.
A second. Any further discussion? Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Frottenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oakman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and I am also, so motion carries. The next item on our agenda is text amendment. Curtis Swisher, agent for the town of Kernersville, for a proposed zoning text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, amending Chapter B. Amendment addresses encroachments into required yard setbacks. Zoning docket KT 268.
Our last text amendment tonight is about architectural canopies in the required yards. Let's see, come on, PowerPoint. The amendment addresses the encroachment of architectural canopies on commercial buildings into required yard setbacks. So these are different from awnings, the way I see it, and the awnings just kind of hang off the building. These typically have posts that anchor into the ground. So they're more structural, they're tied into the building. They don't just screw on and screw off quite like canopy frames or awning frames do over windows or over doors. We're seeing an increasing popularity of drive-through restaurants for convenience and social distancing safety, as well as outdoor patios as people transition to outdoor dining rather than indoor dining. And many developers want an option to provide shelter from the elements and to create that high-quality architectural design for buildings. These are just some generic examples that I pulled off of the internet, so they're not of anything that's being proposed today, although Chick-fil-A would also benefit from this for the canopy over their drive-through pickup window. Canopies are currently allowed to encroach into the required front yard, but are currently not allowed into side or rear yards. So the text amendment would allow the encroachment into a required interior side or rear yard, as long as the projection does not reduce the remaining open portion of the yard to less than 1 foot. So an architectural canopy could get up to a foot of the property line before being too close. That maintains at least a little bit of a setback between properties, but would allow for some flexibility in the design. The staff recommendation is approval of the text amendment as presented.
Thank you. Any questions of board from staff? If not, I'll declare the public hearing open. If you'd like to speak in favor of the petition, call in now.
Jim, I don't believe we have anybody online on calls.
Okay. And if you're in opposition, call in now. And having no one online, I'll declare the public hearing closed. It's the pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to accept as presented.
I
There's
second.
a motion and a second for approval as presented. Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Luann Davis,
Yes.
Jim Frundenberg,
Yes.
Christina Welch,
Yes.
Chris Oatman,
Yes.
Steve Hutchins,
Yes.
Margaret Burks,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes, so that motion carries. Thank you. That ends our public hearings. So the next item on our agenda is the public comments. Do we have any public comments that have been submitted?
I believe we have no call-in. Do you guys any call-ins?
No, we've had no call-ins on the last 3 agenda items.
Thank you.
Okay. Planning board comments. I've got one question anyway. Jeff, when a restaurant expands out, say like, what's the Folly bar or whatever it is, into the driveway that gets to the rear of the building, does that create a safety problem since fire and police and all that can't get to the back of the building?
It is not. There's a current temporary ordinance in place. It's actually public right of way. There's a current ordinance that allows for expansion into public right of ways during the pandemic for outdoor seating. But no, that is not an issue. Basically, that's kind of why you have a ladder. A lot of times people think we have ladder trucks to fight high-rise buildings, but actually ladder trucks are used to spray water in the back of rear of buildings. So, no, there is no concern with that.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, you have any comments?
No, I don't have anything. If you call on me.
Yes. Steve Hutchins? Steve, you got any comments?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I apologize. I have a question. When during presentation from for and against, is there a time limit on how long they can go on repeating the same thing?
Jim, I could answer that. If you're going to have time limits, you have to have a policy that holds it from now until you change your policy. The planning board has always had an open forum for no time frame. And when it gets to the Board of Aldermen, they do have a set time frame that they hold to. But the planning board does not have a set policy of public comment period. I think I think we all agree Jim does a great job telling people not to repeat themselves. So Jim, I'm gonna let you finish up.
Yeah, I guess I was confused the way the Board of Aldermen, because typically things don't run quite like they did, as long as they did tonight, but sometimes I think one person can get redundant, and I think that's what I saw tonight. Anyway, I was just curious. I'm not concerned in changing policy. I was just asking.
Yeah, okay. Chris Oakland?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Christina Welch?
I don't have anything.
Jim Fruttenberg?
I just have one thing. I don't know if just by a motion or by just asking the staff. When we get these things with these administrative development reviews where it's mere findings of fact, and we don't really have a lot of leeway in deciding what to do, we'd like to look at what other jurisdictions do with that and whether a more appropriate way of dealing with that is to have that dealt with at the staff level.
Yes, we can. We'll look at Winston, Forsyth. We'll look at the surrounding jurisdictions. But that's a good point. It puts everybody in an uncomfortable situation when you don't really get to have a opinion. You're just you guys are all volunteer planners. Good luck going through the subdivision regs for conformance. But yeah, we can, because numerous jurisdictions have staff level that can be appealed. So we'll pull together a memo for the next planning board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Joanne Davis?
Jeff, have you heard what's going on with the apartment complex or that development on Old Winston Road? I have not seen any activity out there in months.
They had the luxury of holding off until materials costs drop. Same with the apartment complexes off Union Cross and I-40, Chris Parr's projects. They're also on hold. So several apartment builders around the Triad are holding off until pricing, the materials come down.
Okay, thank you.
Nathan?
Yes, I guess you're trying to see if I can stay out of trouble. Jeff, is Smoke Rise Lane out by Abington in our ETJ?
It is not.
It is not? Okay. Well, that takes care of that question then. So that's all for me then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, staff updates, Jeff?
Catherine, what cases do we have next month? Do you recall?
So far submitted for the next month's planning board, we have an amendment to a final development plan. I believe it might be a rezoning. At Caleb's Creek, they're changing in density on a case you've previously approved on the area known as MU1. We have a two-phase rezoning at Old Greensboro Road and Macy Grove, and that may be it that's come in. Cameron, did we get any other cases that submit a formal application today?
I think that was it for them.
We had a couple that were in the hopper, but I don't think they all made it quite to today's submittal deadline. So
it'd be a rather easy meeting next month. And I guess Catherine will do a quick presentation on the growth report, and I'll do a quick presentation on the thoroughfare and street plan report.
Okay. That's tonight or you're doing next month?
Okay, yeah, Catherine's doing it right now.
Okay.
So I had a long presentation, but I'm just kidding. I didn't have a long presentation. I'll just point you to our town website, toknc.com. Under the Community Development tab down here in the bottom left, there's a link for the growth and traffic data. And our 2020 annual report is now available for you to download and take a look at. It's really interesting in terms of how many permits we've issued over the past year in relation to previous years. You can definitely see the impact that COVID has had when you look at the traffic numbers. And our projections for the population were pretty spot on when it came, when the census data came out. After this was prepared. So it's online, available for your perusal. Take a look at it, and if you have any comments, let us know. But it is on our page, toknc.com, under the Community Development tab, lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, it's really a document that, you know, our other departments use for, you know, projecting out what they need in the future for workforce and vehicles, but also the development community also looks at it for trends and analysis. So I appreciate staff that did a great job putting together that annual report. Any questions or comments on that? If not, on the thoroughfare and street plan annual report, just an update on the NCDOT projects. Also on some of the town projects, I think the most exciting for me for the town projects is the Greenway we've been working on for 10 years. That is actually under construction right now. If you drive down Oakhurst Street, you can, if you look off to the where the creek crosses, you'll see some activity. And then also another thing on the thoroughfare street plan, of course, onward Kernersville that kicked off for implementation. And one of the 5 elements to address is transportation. So we're excited of the onward Kernersville implementation process. So staff is happy to answer any questions.
Any questions to staff? Okay, before we break up, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody involved tonight. I know it's been a long night, but you've done a stellar job. I appreciate it very much. So if there's nothing else to be brought before the board, we'll stand adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, good night, everyone.